CNN can now project that progressive Abdul El-Sayed has clinched Michigan's Democratic Senate primary, defeating Congresswoman Haley Stevens in what was a very bitter and contentious race. El-Sayed will advance to the midterm elections and take on Republican former Congressman Mike Rogers. That's coming up in November. Voters in 5 states punched ballots yesterday in several key primary races across the country. We're also keeping a very close eye on races in Missouri, Kansas, Virginia, and Washington State. Let's begin this hour, though, with the major breaking news coming out of Michigan right now. CNN anchor John Berman is at the Magic Wall. John, walk us through the latest numbers, because now CNN has made its projection.
Yeah, CNN projects that Abdul El-Sayed, seen as the progressive candidate, will be the Democratic nominee for Senate in Michigan. But man, it was close. Less than 1 percentage point separates him from Congresswoman Haley Stevens. The vote difference right now, less than 15,000 votes separate these two candidates. It was very close. And if we just look back over the course of the night until this moment, Abdul El-Sayed led when the polls first closed substantially. He's the light blue line. Haley Stevens is the dark blue line. But as the night went on into the morning, it got closer and closer until these lines were almost touching. But right now, we are projecting that they are wide enough apart that Abdul El-Sayed will be the winner there. As we look at this race and maybe look for signs about what it might mean in terms of strengths and weaknesses for El-Sayed as he heads to the general election against Mike Rogers in November, he did very, very well in the more educated counties. Washita County is where Ann Arbor is, University of Michigan, Wolverines. You can see he ran up the score there by more than 24 points. But right next door in Wayne County, which is the most populous county in the state, about 18% of the vote, it is where Detroit is, also where Dearborn is. Haley Stevens actually won. Wayne County, it has working class voters. It also has a large African American population. If Abdul El-Sayed wants to do well, wants to win in November, he is going to have to make up ground in Wayne County with some of these voting groups where maybe he was not quite as strong in the primary. He'll need to heal some of those rifts. And one other thing I just want to point out here, again, you can see how close the margin is there, 48% to 47% roughly. There was a third candidate in this race, Mallory McMorrow, who dropped out. A number of people still voted for her, more than 60,000. You can see the share of the vote here. You can see El-Sayed, 48.5, Haley Stevens, 47.5. Others, and this is mostly Mallory McMorrow, she had 4%, well over the margin that separated these two candidates. Would it have made it a difference if she had jumped out of the race earlier? We just don't know. One of the remaining questions. But now, of course, the issues are all surrounding what happens in the general election when Abdul El-Sayed, seen as a progressive, takes on Mike Rogers, who has secured, Wolf, the Republican nomination.
All right, John Berman with that projection. John, thank you very, very much. Pamela.
All right, Wolf, let's go live now to CNN Chief National Affairs Correspondent Jeff Zeleny on the ground in Detroit. This really came down to the wire, Jeff.
Pamela, it absolutely did. And this epic battle of the Democratic establishment versus this insurgent progressive movement really played out in battleground Michigan. And for the first time, the progressives have netted a statewide win. But this was a much narrower win than either side expected. Abdul El-Sayed was hoping to deliver a victory speech last night in prime time. He told me that he was hoping to reintroduce himself. Some of his top progressive supporters had statements that they sent out early in the evening predicting a victory to be called shortly after the polls closed. That did not happen. And what John was just talking about there is so interesting, looking forward to the party unifying. Right here, Wayne County, Detroit, Haley Stevens, the Michigan member of Congress, performed very strong here. And the African American vote historically is so important to the Democratic Party. That clearly, that was with the Stevens campaign. I talked with Abdul El-Sayed just a short time ago this morning, and he acknowledged to me that there is work that needs to be done, that he needs to do more outreach in the black community. But he also said it's time for the party to unify and look after and look ahead to Mike Rogers, the Republican nominee. Let's listen.
Look, we all understand the responsibility of beating Mike Rogers and Donald Trump, and the things that unite us are so much bigger than the things that divide us, and I think we need to start tapping into those things. And so for all the folks who might have supported my opponent, this is a big tent. We're doing the work to defeat him, and then also just to get money out of politics, put money in your pocket, and pass Medicare for all.
So there's no doubt that spending was a major issue in this race. Outside groups spent more than $60 million to support the Stevens campaign. More than half of that was from pro-Israel lobbying groups, and there's no doubt that that had some impact on this race as well. But going forward here, Haley Stevens has repeatedly said that she will support the outcome of this race, that she will campaign for Abdul El-Sayed if he wants her to. But a bigger question is, what about this Democratic coalition? Can it come together under the Vise, Wolf and Pam, of just the idea of defeating Donald Trump in November? So we are seeing deeper divisions inside this Democratic Party that we have known existed. But this Michigan race, I would say, shined a brighter spotlight on those as opposed to clarifying this direction of the Democratic Party, Pamela.
Yeah, I want to drill down a little bit on that because Abdul El-Sayed says that he's not part of the DSA, but he did share, or does, I should say, share some of their viewpoints, right, when it comes to Medicare, when it comes to abolishing ICE. What's the message here of the outcome of this race to the Democratic Party?
Well, look, I mean, his victory here in Michigan is the most significant victory from the progressive movement that we have seen in a Senate race and certainly a statewide election in a primary campaign. But the actual answer to that question, Pamela, will come after November to see if he can defeat the Republican challenger here, Mike Rogers, of course, a former Michigan member of Congress. He ran just a couple years ago. He came up just 19,000 votes short in his race with Alyssa Slotkin. So he has been running for months unopposed. So now the question is this electability question that really was a central anthem and question hanging over this race? Is Abdul El-Sayed electable in November? We will find that out. So the true test of this progressive movement will come in the next 3 months between now and November. But there's no doubt that Abdul El-Sayed is going to be asked to clarify some of his positions. He proudly supports Medicare for all. He's a Bernie Sanders progressive Democrat. So that is what we are going to see play out here. Haley Stevens, of course, was a middle of the road, a moderate Democrat. She campaigned on the fact of getting things done, her record in Congress. But this was a change electorate. The voters we talked to really across the board said now is time for change. There is so much anger and distrust at Democratic leadership that this is the biggest example yet. We've seen examples in House races in New York City, House races in Denver in primaries. This Michigan example is the biggest one yet we've seen, that voters inside the party are frustrated with their own party leadership. Of course, Donald Trump hangs over all of this, so perhaps he can be a unifying figure here, but that remains an open question as well. Looking at these results, so close, so narrow, how or if this party comes together will play a huge part in knowing which party controls the Senate after November, Pamela.
You mentioned Donald Trump. What does the turnout among Democrats in this primary tell you?
The turnout, extraordinary. I mean, it was a record-setting turnout, at least as we looked back to 1998 or so for a non-presidential primary. So the turnout says to me that Democrats really across the board, if you're an establishment Democrat, a progressive Democrat, you are eager to weigh in, voice your opinion against the Trump administration's policies. And I think to a person, Pamela, the voters we talked to yesterday talked about trying to send a message to the Trump administration, try and have a voice against the Trump policies. But we are here in Michigan, of course, to state that Donald Trump won in 2024. He lost in 2020, but he won in 2024. So this is a deeply divided state. But Democrats are enthused. There's no doubt about it. A question is those independent voters in the middle, how they will react to this race between Abdul El-Sayed and Mike Rogers. And of course, we should point out the broader context of this is Democrats must hold Michigan and flip 4 Republican Senate seats if they are going to win control of the Senate. So certainly it is possible. It is a tough political environment for Republicans. The president's approval rating is as low as we have seen it. but it is not an easy path for Democrats as well here. So Michigan will be front and center, as well as a handful of other races between now and November.